just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
What's happening, guys? It's time for another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your favourite educator, Ian Dawson Mackay. Next Level Guy is the go-to's men's interview, interest and improvement-based website where I quiz the experts to find out the hacks, tips, protocols and methods that you can implement in your own life to live happier, healthier, wealthier, sexier and so much more. Today's guest is Bobby Maximus, who describes himself as a UFC veteran and Men's Health magazine writer, an IBJJF World Master Champion, and a keeper authenticity. Bobby teaches you to train your mind as well as your body to achieve your goals. He's now a world-renowned strength coach who takes no BS and helps millions of people transform their lives. He's also a devoted father. He's beaten elite competitors in the cage, a life-threatening disease, and a life of mediocrity. He's achieved so much in life and is here to help you achieve your own goals, no matter what they may be. And this is the interview you need to listen to if you're getting held back in life, if you're not going after what you truly want because of fear or some other bullshit excuse that's holding you back. Bobby will teach you how to achieve your goals by coaching you how to lift your head high, your middle finger even higher, and cut the damn excuses, train your mind and your body, and instead smash your goals every damn day. And now, let's get to the interview. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm a big fan of yours. You know, you're walking around like a brick shithouse at an age where most people are falling apart. You've competed in the UFC. You've been a policeman. You've done such an amazing amount of things. You've recovered from a life-threatening illness, you know, and you just keep smashing your goals out of the park. But for people who maybe don't know who you are, could you just give a quick overview of, you know, how would you describe yourself and what you do?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. I'm always honored and humbled when people think highly enough of me to spend time with me. So my stage name, if you want to call it a stage name, is Bobby Maximus. It's not my government name. My government name is Robert McDonald. It's a pretty common name. There's millions of us out there, but I go by Bobby Maximus now. I fought in the UFC. I've been in charge of some pretty incredible gyms and projects in the fitness space. I've had the opportunity to write for Men's Health, and so here I am.
Well, I initially discovered you through Men's Health. I found some of your articles and tried, I think it was your one workout killer set, and I was hating you by the end of it. You know, I just kept going and going. I think you said in the article, you know, you would either die or just lose your mind from it. And I think I did it with a squat bar, and yeah, it was intense, let's put it that way. And then one of the guys at the gym started mentioning you in terms of the UFC and, you know, that you were used to be in the police. And I was like, are you sure it's the same guy? Because it seemed to be, you know, such a massive difference of careers. You seem to have done a bit of everything. But can you tell me a little bit about your upbringing? You know, like where did you grow up? Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
How did you become you?
You know, I grew up in a small town in northern Canada. I had one brother, a couple of parents that loved me very much. We did not grow up rich. I did not grow up with a ton of what I'll call opportunities, but I had two parents that would do anything for me and loved me. I was bullied fairly heavily till I was probably 15 years old. The bullying thing is it's difficult to talk about because, you know, Ian, I bet you've been bullied to a degree. Everyone's been called names. Everyone's been made fun of. Even those people that you think of as the most successful people in the world have been bullied to a degree. But I was punched in the face on the bus. Kids drew on my face with marker. They called me names. I was never one of the popular kids. And when I was 15, these kids, they beat me up in gym class and broke my collarbone. And I didn't ever want that to happen again. And so I kind of stumbled into the wrestling team. It's interesting because I didn't have an athletic background. I was cut from most of the sports teams I ever tried out for. I wasn't good at stuff. And my first year wrestling, I lost every single match. And I probably had 30 or 40 matches that year. And then the second year wrestling, I won 1 out of 40 matches. And I realized then, like, I needed help. Like, I was trying hard, but I was terrible. And so I went into the weight room, and I went in scared. I don't know how many people that you're listening to have had this experience, but the weight room can be a really intimidating place if you've never done it before. Like, never mind the fact that you're going to get judged by other people or you're not in good shape, but like, what the hell are you supposed to do? How much bench press am I supposed to do? How many pull-ups am I supposed to do? What if I can't do a pull-up? And so I kind of found myself into the weight room. I got pinned under a 45-pound bar, 20 kilos if you're in the UK. So you can add that to my resume, that I have been pinned under an empty barbell. I don't remember ever doing pull-ups. I don't really remember doing push-ups. I don't really know where I was at physically. I remember struggling, and there was a couple of people who helped me along the way. There was a guy, Mike Xavier, who else gave me some advice? Jim Fox, Eugene Vinci, Brian Sepatelli. There's some people around that, gave me some advice. And so I started to experiment and train. And I started to learn. I got obsessed with men's health, started reading books. This is in the day I was going to say I looked up stuff online, but there wasn't just an Instagram you could check for workouts. And so you'd have to buy the magazines and then try stuff out. And through a process of trial and error, I got pretty fucking strong. And I started to win wrestling matches, and I got better and better and better. And as I got better, confidence grew. And as confidence grew, my work ethic increased, and I just kept trying. At that point, I was probably training 2 to 3 times a day and just doing my best. And I ended up doing really well in wrestling, had a great wrestling career in university. I was second in the world for kickboxing at one point. I got really good at grappling at jiu-jitsu, and then found myself in the UFC. And all of that, I really think was from that pivotal moment of getting my collarbone broken, but then also really just sucking at wrestling, just being terrible and trying to navigate out of that. I always tell people that those 2 years of just complete failure taught me more about work ethic than I think any of my successes.
I love that. I mean, that was how do I say this? Part of the main attraction was the bullying, because when I was in primary school, I've got like a squash nose and big lips, so I had 3 boys who were just relentless at me, and there was name calling till I was crying, and one lived next door to me, so I was terrified to go outside when I seen him, and there wasn't as physical, but it was like quite a lot emotional and kind of. I think I probably took years to kind of overcome it, and I could see part of my philosophy, my own sort of approach to life and interest was shaped by that experience. And I think that's the problem is a lot of people will fix the physical stuff, but we don't deal with the mental stuff. And that's why I was so, I loved looking at your stuff, because you teach how to strengthen the mind as well as the fitness side of stuff. You teach people how to be strong individuals and fit individuals in both capacities. And that's something you don't see much here. And to see you turn from somebody who was bullied and, not confident and scared into somebody strong in that. I mean, I've started doing jiu-jitsu. I'm a blue belt currently. And I still sometimes struggle to be aggressive in that sense.
Yep.
And that's why I was really glad to see what you had achieved, and thinking, how I would love to tap into that kind of mentality to show people how you can take like your demons and your dark side and actually use it as a sort of a motivational tool. And your stuff is phenomenal. But how did you turn that initial, oh God, I'm bullied, I've been hurt by these, how did you not let that just destroy you and instead use it as a way to motivate you? Because was that not like terrifying to go into the weight room for the first time? How would you advise people who are maybe in that similar situation?
I think the answer to that's difficult, and it's multifaceted, the answer. The first thing is it starts with loving parents at home. If you feel loved by your parents and supported by them, I think it's easier to face bullying at school. And so because I had 2 parents in the home that loved me very much, I think I had a good foundation. The second thing is for whatever reason, and there's an intrinsic part of this I can't explain, I really just loved wrestling. You know? And when you love something, it's easy to show up even when it's hard, even when you're scared. When you love something and really want to do it, it's easy to be motivated. You understand what I mean? There's a lot of adults these days who don't train, who don't want to train, who have a hard time being committed to staying to the gym, and it's because they don't love it. It's really difficult to be motivated and get over stuff if you're not in love with something. And I just really, even though I was bad at it, for whatever reason, I loved wrestling and fighting.
Because that's definitely something I noticed in my own side of things was I would shy away when I became in the spotlight. You know, like when it was something for people to notice you and to pay attention to you. I noticed if I got any criticism at all, I would kind of like self-sabotage. And I think a lot of people are like that, you know, where they've not been told that they're good at something, or that they've been told they can't change, that, you know, that they're never going to be able to get muscles or whatever it is, you know. So they start thinking, well, what's the point of trying? And that's why I was very keen with your stuff was, it's, you know, you teach people how to remove that self-imposed limitations on them. But if we take it right back to the start, how do we even define what fit is? Because it's quite a unique concept. It's like so relative to your end goal. I mean, you know, if you can bench, you know, 200 kilograms, for example, but you can't walk up 4 flights of stairs, could you describe yourself as fit?
Yeah, I think so. What I say is when anyone ever asks me if I'm fit, I say fit compared to what or fit compared to who. Mm-hmm. And they're both valid answers, right? So I may be really fit to fight in an MMA fight or do jiu-jitsu, but I may not be so fit to run a marathon. And then that also depends who you're comparing yourself to. I'm fit for a marathon compared to a person who's never worked out before, but not compared to one of the best runners in the world. And so both those things play a factor in your idea of fitness.
No, I really like that, because you said that the gym was like a microcosm of life, and you know the problems that you find in the gym are, you know, basically what you'd find in life. And I always like that sort of analogy about squats is, you know, weight pushes you down and you've got to push it back up, and you've carry it on your back, and you know you build your strength up from that by sort of repping through your problems. But can you please, can you expand a bit about that? Because I think a lot of people just think the gym is just go in, lift heavy stuff. They don't seem to understand what the gym's teaching, or, you know, like what you can get from working out. You know, how can you...
So let me answer that by asking you a question. What do you do for a living? What's your job? What's your career, your vocation?
At the moment, working in a university.
Okay, and what do you do at the university?
At the moment, working with PhD students, sitting behind a desk, solving problems, making people hit milestones, legal stuff, the usual fun and games.
Okay, so are there challenges you face at work?
Mm-hmm. So,
do you have moments, and this is the rhetorical part of the questions, but or actually you could just answer yes and no. Are there challenges you face at work?
Yes.
Do you have things that come across your desk at work that you don't know if you can deal with?
No, on a daily basis.
Do you ever have meetings with people that you're nervous about?
Occasions.
Do you ever have issues where you're not quite confident in how something's going to turn out?
Yes.
Do you ever have to do planning, both short-term and long-term planning?
Yes.
Well, the skills that it takes to do that, those are skills you can develop in the gym. You may approach a squat bar and not know if you can lift that weight. You may feel not that confident. There may be a challenge you have a difficulty overcoming in the gym, and you have to do some short-term and long-term planning to overcome it. So it's not special because it's fitness, but those skills of trying things out and experimenting and then improving, I think those transfer to every other area of life.
Because it's something I do tell people about, you know, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, about how it teaches you so many different things, well before you even consider the self-defense, the martial arts side of things.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example because jiu-jitsu is not that much different than working out. You have a problem to solve and you need skills to solve it. And so I think that the gym and jiu-jitsu, for example, are safe places to learn and practice skills, practice your skill building, practice problem solving, and in a safe way that you're not going to lose your job if you fuck up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can do it in a safe laboratory, if you will. And I think that's what makes you better.
Yeah, because if you fuck up in your job, you've got a chance of losing it. In the gym, you just go for another rep.
Yeah, who really gives a shit if you fail on a bench press? If you don't row a 2,000 meter row fast enough, do you think anyone really cares, Ian?
No.
No, you're the only one that cares. You're not getting dumped by your girlfriend. You're divorced by your wife. You're not losing your job. So it's a safe place to try stuff and be vulnerable, I think.
Well, I at least hope your relationship isn't judged by if you can roll for 2,000 meters or not. Yep. But what would you say then are the physical benchmarks? Because they used to be in the gym magazines, you'd see, it was like bench press your own weight, deadlift double the weight, and I think it was squat, your body weight by times and a half, and that was like you were fit. But now you see it as a terms of, can you do 45 perfect form press ups? Can you do, like 60 burpees in 2 minutes or something? Has the idea of fitness changed as we've evolved? Is it now we no longer we were specializing too much and we need to be general and have a skill set like cardio, strength, power, force? Has our idea of what it takes to be fit and how to define it, has that expanded and developed over the last 10 years?
Yes and no. I think that, first of all, it relates back to that task or you're fit for what, like we talked about before. I think when you have specific tasks, rowing, running, basketball, maybe football, I don't know. I think there's a very specific skill set that you need. For general fitness, I think it's really open-ended, and I've come to the point that it's too hard to define. Because if your goal is just to look good, I mean, let me ask you that question. If your goal is to look good, what is the only standard you need to pay attention to?
How you look in the mirror, I suppose.
You nailed it. That's it. It's that simple. Does it matter what you can bench press?
No.
Does it matter what you can row?
No.
No. Now, to a degree, it does, because chances are if you can only bench press a 45-pound bar and you can only run a 15-minute mile and you can't walk up a flight of stairs without getting out of breath, you're probably not going to look that good. Can we agree on that?
Aye.
However, for the most part, it makes it really open-ended. So I've actually developed a list of 20 standards. A double body weight deadlift, a 2,000 meter row in 7 minutes, bench pressing your body weight 10 times, a double body weight back squat, the ability to row a 2K in under 7 minutes that I think relate to general fitness that most people are capable of, but I don't know how set in stone I am that every single person needs to have those under their belt.
Yeah, because when I used to powerlift, for example, it was great to be able to deadlift over 200 kilograms, but then I noticed I was getting out of breath when I had to go up 7 or 8 flights of steps, and I was like, all right, then am I fit? Is it? Then when I started jiu-jitsu and I started losing weight, I noticed my power was going, and it's like, well, I'm more flexible and I'm more like coordinated, but am I fit compared to if I go to the gym? And that it's quite a hard thing to define because you need to know what your end goal is. And too many people think they define being fit by going to the gym only. They forget there's all these other activities. I mean, I love that you look at workouts that only involve one thing. You remove the complications. You take away all these like overcomplicated schemes and talk progressive overload, and you take all these sort of terms away. You show people how to work out just using their body. But something that you really do push on, which I really liked, was the idea of self-work. Could you go into a little bit about that? How working, like self-work, actually helps you and makes you sort of a fitter and stronger person overall?
Yeah, well, I think self-work can be defined as different things, but overall, self-work is just working on being better than you were yesterday. That's a key element in all this. And so you can do self-work in different areas. There's physical self-work. That's becoming more fit, being able to run faster, lift more, lowering your resting heart rate, I suppose. Regulating your blood pressure, your blood triglycerides, like those are all things that are part of fitness and health, if you will. But then the self-work I really focus on is the self-work psychologically. And a lot of us neglect this because it's really hard to do. How many times have you sat down and assessed your relationship, assessed your ability to empathize, maybe assessed some stuff from your childhood that you've been running from that you have not been dealing with? That's really difficult to do. It's hard to look yourself in the mirror and really try to improve yourself from a psychological standpoint and be a better person. And I think that's the real path to people fulfilling their goals, is being able to do that and be honest with themselves and work on the hard things.
Because that was definitely something I liked about your material. Was a lot of people, they make a sort of shallow attempt at improving themselves and becoming fitter, and then therefore, kind of stronger people. They kind of go in and they try to go in the weights, and then as soon as the hardship starts, the bit where you see the small, tiny incremental changes, they give up because they're not seeing the beginner changes. They're kind of saying, oh, well, I'm not seeing any changes, I'll stop. But how do we then remove that limitations, forget about other people, what they're doing, and actually just get in there? Is this the concept of killing our governors? It's of actually going in and making like a deep, proper change, because that's something you seem to do with your clients. You actually help them break down the bullshit story they're telling themselves or they've lived by. You actually teach them how to grow and develop as a person as much as in the gym. How do you start that? How do you break down that shit that's holding you back?
I think it's one day at a time. I think when you're talking about self-imposed limitations, and this is something I've recently started to adopt, it's nice to have a big overarching goal. So you said you'd worked up to what for your deadlift? Over 200 kilos?
I think it was like 205, 210, something like that.
Yeah, it's a great deadlift, but did you start deadlifting that?
Oh, no, nowhere close.
Okay, so you get it. So when you started deadlifting, call it 100 kilos or 105 kilos, could you even imagine getting to 205? My answer is probably not. So what I really try to focus on with people to kill that governor and burst through their self-imposed limitations is we're not going to set a massive goal. I'm not going to set some big overarching thing that you're going to try to achieve. All we're going to do is focus on being better than yesterday. We're just going to focus on rowing 1 second faster, lifting 1 more pound of weight, 1 more kilo of weight a week, losing just a pound a week rather than focusing on losing 100 pounds. If you can do that, imagine the result down the road. So how does this play out? Because you've talked about the deadlift. Remember when you were only deadlifting 100 kilos? Mm-hmm. Could you do 101 kilos the next week? The answer is probably yes. Then the next week you do 102. Then the next week you do 103. Now it's only 1 kilo a week, but in a year you could put 52 kilos on your deadlift. That's incredible. So by focusing on those small little steps, the big picture will fall into place without you having some limitation.
Yeah, because you see those, it's usually every guy thinks they could win every fight. Every guy thinks they could get the girl. But when you ask people, like, what they're doing in the gym, for example, if they're new, I'm going to go to 4 classes a week. I'm going to start running a mile every morning. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And they always overestimate what they're able to do. And habit change takes such a long time that it kind of, they start off well, but then when the the DOMs hit, when the getting up and having to prep food hits, when they want to just lie in, when they need that sugar hit, most people crumble at that point. So how do you then incorporate green light thoughts? How do you make sure at this point when people are thinking, I need to give up, this is just not working for me, how do you keep motivation? How do you keep getting people to go back to the gym till that consistency muscle builds in, and they just keep going because they start enjoying it?
Motivation has to do more with value than anything else. And what I mean by that, if you see value in your life from what you're doing, you're going to do it all the time. If you don't see value, it's almost impossible to motivate a person. So what do you think motivates most people more than anything these days? Why do you work?
It's money at the moment,
Good.
sadly.
You win. You're answering my questions. We're on the same page. So money motivates a lot of people. What country are you from?
Based in Scotland, UK at the moment.
All right. What is the state of fitness in Scotland? If Scotland has 20 million people, do you have 20 million fit people walking around?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. If you were able to say to people, we'll lower your tax rate by 15% if you were fit, how many fit people would you have walking around?
20 million, probably.
All of them. Like it's that simple because you get real value from fitness. But we live in a society where what's the penalty for being unfit? Not much. You're not losing your job. You're probably not losing your girlfriend or your wife or your husband. And by the way, if you're fat and out of shape, when you go to the airport, you don't even have to walk anymore. You can stand on a treadmill that just zips you between terminals.
And you probably get taken to your seat sooner. You get lifts everywhere.
So why do you want to be fit? So there's not much value in it. So the key to keeping people motivated, is to convince them that there's value and to show them the value in what they're doing.
So how then do you motivate people to become fit? Do they need to have something not severely negative, but do people need to just have a bit of pain in their life? Because you said recently about pain leading to power, struggle leads to strength. Do people need to find pain and struggle?
I think there needs to be a struggle. You've got to have a reason for doing this. And it's funny what drives people, like a health scare will drive people to train. Right? A death in the family will drive people to train. You know what the most motivating factor in a middle-aged man or woman getting in shape is? It's getting a divorce. Because what happens when you get divorced?
They always want to reinvent themselves.
Yeah, you're back on the market. Right? So you'll see people who are 30 pounds overweight, out of shape, don't take care of themselves, dress poorly. And then when they get divorced, guess what happens in 3 weeks? They lose 30 pounds. They have brand new clothes. They reinvent themselves. It's really motivating because people don't want to be alone. So I think that negative things in life. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go and get divorced because that's going to be your secret to fitness. It doesn't quite work like that. But you understand what I'm saying. When bad things happen to people, they get their ass in gear. It is motivating.
So do you think that's like an sort of invisible script that sort of holds people? When they're married, you become part of a couple. People associate you in a certain way, but when when they do get to these sort of big life-changing events, the scripts are broken down so they can change. But how would you then change if you wanted to transform yourself, become a stronger person mentally, physically, etc.? Take up jiu-jitsu, do a hobby that they've always wanted to do, where they're in a situation, they're not in that situation, where they haven't got a bit of pain that they can identify or that they're aware of. How can they find that motivation if nothing is kind of, creating it for them?
I think surround yourself by people who have used fitness as a vehicle to making their life better, so you have a firsthand example of how it can work.
Because I get that a lot as people say, "Oh, I'd love to do jiu-jitsu. Oh, you've lost so much weight, but I could never do that." I was thinking, well, why? I could barely get my hips over my roll it back over and get my feet to touch the floor because I was so tight from deadlifting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you become who you hang around. Like, hang out with people who have used it to improve their life, like I said, and then you'll follow suit.
So something I was really keen to speak to you about was you talked about your work with a sports psychologist. And that's something I think a lot of people, when they were looking at fitness, I would class myself as an athlete. I'm looking to compete in jiu-jitsu this year. Definitely looking to get my diet and my fitness up, etc. But a lot of people do it for a bit of fun. But how did the work with the sports psychologist help you, with dealing with clients? Has it opened up a kind of a way of looking at clients and understanding what's happening mentally as well? Were you taught anything particular that you find really works with a client to help them get through that initial transformation, to get better in the gym, to become a stronger person?
Yeah, it's helped for sure. I think the biggest thing with sports psychology that's helped is that understanding that the brain is the most important predetermining factor in success. If you're not strong mentally, you're not going to be successful, because most people were not born with the genetic gift, right? Like, for example, in jiu-jitsu, you've got to learn from scratch, and most people are not just born good at jiu-jitsu. And so your ability to have things like resilience, your ability to have dedication, your work ethic, your ability to face failure, those are things that are going to play a bigger role in your success. And so working with a sports psychologist, it was understanding that that's the driving factor. The other thing was learning the biggest areas in which people have difficulty. And I think they're self-imposed limitations and negative self-talk. I think those are the two things that kill your performance more than anything. And if you can learn to deal with those, it's much easier to be successful.
Well, now would seem a great time for a quick break. I just want to chat to you about the affiliates. I know, you're probably fed up of hearing about bloody affiliate products on podcast, but please bear with me. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which one are worth your hard-earned money? It's simple. You go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore the products and services that I recommend that will transform, improve, and evolve your life. Now, on this affiliate page, you'll find the products that I think you should buy, the books you should read, and the tools that I think you should own. I'll only recommend products that I've tried or believe in, and all the recommendations and reviews are 100% honest. Furthermore, on this page, you'll find any suitable special offers, listener exclusive deals, and discount codes that I'm sent by these companies. There really is something for everyone here. It doesn't matter if you're buying for yourself, a special occasion, or for someone else in your life, you can find whatever you need there. There's a wide range of companies showcased on the page. Companies that will make you a better athlete, a better lover, a better man, and basically better in all areas of your life. Who won't want to see that stuff? You can access the page by going to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, or if you're on the website homepage, click on the affiliate deals in the blue ribbon at the top of the website homepage. Please note, I do not receive any information on you or what you purchase. The companies send me a small thank you commission for sending you to shop with them on my links. This does not inflate the price you pay, and usually allows me to help showcase cheaper options than if you bought directly, as affiliates are allowed into special deals, lower prices, and so much more. All your information is safe and secure with the company, and nothing is shared with me, so have at it and enjoy the links. If you use any of my links, I would just like to say a massive thank you, as I tend to use the money to make this podcast bigger and better and help evolve my own life, and I really appreciate your trust in my recommendations and being a fan of the show. And now, let's get back to the interview. I hope you're enjoying it as much as the fun I had recording it. Because back when you were competing in like MMA, I remember you talked about you had a bad loss, you had been unconscious for about 5 minutes. How did you come back from that? A lot of people would have just said no. They were just afraid to step back in. But when you came back and got better and better, you've gone on to create some amazing things and achieve some great things in your life. How did you get over that negative self-talk? Because that's something that holds a lot of people back. They're always worried about people watching them squat in the gym. They're worried about people judging them because they're maybe fatter than the next person. How do we deal with negative self-talk?
Purposeful practice. You can't just listen. You can't read a self-help book that tells you to think positively and then just turn that on like a tap. You've got to practice it, and it's difficult. And so there's two things I do. One, I have these little green dots. I actually sell them that I put everywhere. And so there's a green dot on my table right now. There's a green dot on my laptop. There's a green dot on my phone. And every time I see a green dot, I have to think a positive thought about myself to start training your brain to think that way. The other thing, if you don't want to use green dots, is you wake up in the morning and write down 5 positive things about yourself or 5 reasons you're going to be successful. Because without practicing, you can't expect yourself to just think or act a certain way.
So how then do we know that the goals we're picking for ourselves, if, like we were saying earlier about people who come in and I'm going to go to 5 gym classes this week and then I'm going to run a mile at the weekend, etc. How do we know then that we're picking legitimate goals, but also that we are putting proper effort in? Because I love the way that you don't take BS from anybody. You don't take excuses.
I mean, the truth is you don't really know when you set a goal, especially if you have no experience in the area. Right? You're only going to know by trying. So I think the first thing is to have an open-ended goal. I'd much rather people have the idea of, rather than say, I can or cannot do this and making up a decision, just to say, I'm going to try it and see what happens.
So how do we then avoid becoming a slave to our self-image? How do we go, well, I'm always the big guy. I've always had knee problems. I'm just not going to try.
Just get off your ass and try it. What's the worst that could happen?
I mean, so when you were changing your career and, you were trying the police and then, you'd come from MMA, etc., did you have any kind of issues with that? Was it, did you have a certain way of like diversifying and try new things? How did you overcome that initial worry, stress?
Again, it sounds simple, but let's just try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? So I'll give you an example. When I got into strength and conditioning on a full-time basis, I was working as a cop. I had a good job. I was on a good career path. I was making a reasonable wage. And then I had the opportunity to go be a strength and conditioning coach and leave policing. That was a little bit scary, yes. But what I settled on is, I'm going to try it and see how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, I can always get my police job back. So I just tried it. I don't know if I even had a plan at that point about what I was going to do. I just was willing to take a risk and try it. And I think it sounds simple, but if more people would just shut off the negative voices and just be willing to try, they'd be successful. Think of yourself with this podcast. Do you want to have the most successful podcast in the world?
Yeah, definitely.
Would you like to have Joe Rogan's download numbers?
Happily take them right now.
Happily, right? But are you there right now?
I've got 1 or 2 of the numbers, but not all of them though.
No. So how are you going to deal with that? I mean, the real question is, are you just going to quit? Are you going to stop? Are you going to just be negative? Are you going to bash yourself? Are you going to be filled with worry and doubt and jealousy over other successful people? Or are you just going to record and do the very best you can and see what happens? Most people shut down before they even try. Why not just try it? What's the worst thing that can happen? Take this podcast, for example. You randomly sent me an email. What's the worst thing that I could have said?
No, or go away.
Yeah, go away. Stop bugging me. But if that would have happened, will that ruin your career?
No, it's happened before and it will happen again.
Yeah, and for every 100 people that say no, there'll be amazing people that say yes. True or false?
Definitely true.
So just ask. Get over yourself and ask. The next question is, I agreed to come on the show, and it absolutely just sucks. It's terrible. I can't speak. I'm a complete fraud. Everything that I've ever talked about is fraudulent. And you're like, oh shit, I cannot put that up. This is garbage. What, you wasted maybe, right now we're at 37 minutes and 14 seconds, but you wasted that period of your life. That's it. But it's probably not a waste because you probably learned something from it. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you have a lot of editing to do and you could edit a really good finished product. So you get some editing experience. But you never would have got that if you just didn't try. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because you see that with a lot of people is, oh, so this guy beside me was benching 100 kilograms and I'm only benching an empty bar. And you think, and they give up because of that. And how do you stop that? You know, how do we stop people comparing ourselves to the guy next to us or the lady in front of us with a better ass or whatever it is, and actually compare ourselves to the guy in the mirror, the guy that we are feeling better than the version of ourselves that was walking up stairs and out of breath after 2 stairs, but now we can go up 2 flights of stairs. How do we stop ourselves comparing?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Just focus on being better than yesterday. The only one you need to be better than was who you were yesterday. The only easy day was yesterday. However you want to put it, you just have to be better than you were yesterday. And if you can do that for a long enough period of time, you will be incredible at what you do.
So you've said that we need to keep challenging ourselves daily. But how do we make sure that we're not burning ourselves out? You know, we're getting to a point of legitimately challenging ourselves to build that mental resilience, but we're not actually damaging ourselves. You know, we're giving ourselves a chance to recover. We're giving ourselves a chance to grow as a person.
Yeah, there's 2 ways. One, you have to love what you do. If you hate podcasting, don't do it. Find something you really love and that motivates you. We all end up doing things that we don't like or things that we're not passionate about, and it's a dead end. So find something you love is number 1. Number 2, make sure you get a good night's sleep every night. Make sure you're sleeping 8 hours. Make sure you're filling your body with adequate nutrients. Make sure you've got a decent level of fitness. Make sure you do some type of recovery activity like get a massage, go in a sauna, meditate, do something to give back to yourself so that you've got the energy to do what you love. Those 2 things combined will yield tremendous results.
Now, on your website, you've got some amazing transformations. You know, some clients have gone some like startling transformations in their body shape, but also it seems like their outlook in life. How do you kind of start dealing with a client? You know, how would you work with, say I came into the gym and I said to you, I wanted to become a stronger person. I wanted to go and do jiu-jitsu. I wanted to get a 6-pack. How would you start working with me? Is there a sort of universal plan that you put me on? Is there concepts like journaling, gratification, visualization techniques that you would also get me to do? How would you work with me mentally and physically to start that transformation?
You know, it's a 4 tiered approach, I guess. When I work with people, I work with them on 4 fronts, and I do training in person, but I also do training online. I have a huge online training platform where a lot of people who've had the biggest success with me I've never met in real life. I've helped them over the phone and over calls. We focus on 4 areas. First is physical fitness, because I think that sets the table for every other area of your life. I think you're more resilient to stress. I think you learn how to do self-work. I think you face challenges that you overcome, and I think you can become better from it. Nutrition, you have to have reasonable nutrition to improve. You have to worry about your health. There's a big foundation there. Sleep, you need to sleep a lot. Sleep's the real answer. You need to get 8 hours a night and able to hit your full potential. And then the next one is, I'll call it stress, but it's more than stress, psychological counseling. So learning how to set boundaries, learning how to deal with negative self-talk, learning to deal with self-imposed limitations, learning how to deal with daily stressors, learning how to say no, because a lot of us say yes to a bunch of shit we never want to do. So by helping people address those 4 areas in their life, they can make incredible transformations. Now, the more areas that you take away, the less successful people become. You can have a great training program and have great nutrition. If you're not sleeping well and you're filled with stress and you don't have any boundaries, you're not going to do well. So you need to have like 4 out of 4 of these things. 3 out of 4 is acceptable, I guess. 2 out of 4 or 1 out of 4, you're not going anywhere.
I love the way you look at things, and it's the way that you outline them is just so refreshing. You don't kind of allow the usual excuses like I don't have time. The time audit thing that you do is amazing. I mean, I don't want to. I've heard you mention it a few times, and I'd love for you to share it. But as long as you're not too fed up of talking about it. But say somebody comes to you and says, I really don't have time to do this. I work hard. I do this. I do X, Y, Z. Could you go into a little bit about your time audit? Because you really do show that it's a false sort of belief that people don't have time to work out.
You always have time for everything. What I tell people is put 168. That's the number of hours there are in a week on a piece of paper. Put that at the top of a list, and then start subtracting what you actually spend time on. So maybe you work 50 hours a week. Maybe you sleep 8 hours a night. That's 56 hours a week. Well, now we're only at 96 hours on that. If it's 40 hours of work and 56 hours of sleep, what the hell else are you doing with your time? You still got like 70 some hours left. Start filling it up. And by going through this exercise, and like by itemizing their time, people find they always have 30 or 40 or 20 free hours in a week. So your time stuff's bullshit. You do have time. You probably have time to do another podcast today. Probably have time to do one tomorrow. You probably have time to edit. You just have to make the time, but it comes back to wanting it. And it shows people that their excuses are garbage. And then it forces them to address what the real issue is. Because as long as we make excuses, we'll never address the real issue.
I love that. I love the way that that, especially that last statement, is there's always the real issue. People assume they don't have time because it's easier to think it's an outside factor that's causing it rather than something in your own life or your own, what you really want to do. Something I was really keen to speak to. You mentioned about getting into like teaching people wrestling, so you've worked with like UFC fighters, special forces soldiers. You've worked with some like top tier level athletes, combat people, etc. Have you noticed something about the way that they train, the way they look at goals, that, they work on skill development, that sort of thing? Is there key takeaways you've noticed that you think the average Joe could utilize in their life? Is there key habits that they utilize apart from sleeping and sort of getting good nutrition?
You got to show up day after day after day after day and do the thing. It's why my catchphrase or my slogan's every damn day. If you look at the best people in the world, whether they're fighters, special forces soldiers, or the best intellects in the world, you know what they all have in common? They do the thing every damn day. They work at it. They don't quit. They ask questions. They're inquisitive. They show up. It's that simple. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
So if we were to set up somebody, say you had a client just now, how would you work in terms of their office, their car, their journey to work? How can we set up our lives to make sure they're removing, like the bad nutrition, they're removing the going drinking at nights, and do you help them in that sense as well of the other like problem parts of their life, or do you find that the changes you make in the gym gives them the confidence to choose not to go down these bad paths?
Oh, that's a tough one. Going down a bad path, I think it comes down to, and I know I may be oversimplifying things, but I think it comes down to how bad you want it, right? Like, do you have kids?
Not yet, no.
Okay, I'll tell you a story about somebody that does have kids, because I'm sure your listeners do. I trained a guy This is years ago when I worked in a global gym. A global gym is like a big box gym, like a Equinox 24/7. I think a big one in the UK is Gym Box. Is that right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you have your big box gym, and I trained this guy, and he couldn't lose weight. I say couldn't. He wouldn't lose weight. And one of the reasons is he kept eating nuts all day, just thousands of calories of peanuts, cashews, macadamia nuts, these types of things. And he wouldn't lose weight. So I actually fired him as a client. Told him I didn't want to work with him anymore. I'm only going to work with dedicated people, and I am done with you. You're wasting my time. Well, a few years later, I saw the guy, and he'd lost all the weight that I couldn't help him lose. I said, well, what the hell you been doing? Like, I'm curious now. Like, what secret did you discover? So he said, I stopped eating nuts. What? He's like, yeah, I stopped eating nuts and the weight just melted off, because you can get a lot of calories in through nuts and trail mix and things like that. And I said, how did you do that? Like, you were so dead set against it when we were training together. And he said, I had a son that, I had a baby that was born and he was severely allergic to nuts. And so I just quit. Like, oh shit, that's all it took. You love your kid. You don't want your kid to die. You'll fucking do anything. You're done. It was easy at that point because he valued his son. He valued what he got from that. So I think that when people don't value it enough or don't want it enough, it's too easy to fall into these traps. And so that's I think the real bad path to go down. So that's why I said earlier, make sure you love what you do, because when you love what you do, this stuff becomes easy.
Because that was something I was wanting to sort of cover, was how did, when you became a father, how did that change your sort of outlook? Did it kind of make you consider not working out as much and spending more time with the kids and stuff? Or did it kind of motivate you that you had to be a good example for them? Because a lot of people go down the different paths, it kind of inspires them, and other people kind of use it almost as an excuse to drop what they want to do, things they've never wanted to do. Is that because they don't love it as much? They've never truly loved the hobby that they're doing, or they're not really going for goals that they truly want, do you think?
Yeah, I think we get trapped in society of doing things we feel we ought to do versus doing things we want to do. Like, what do you really want, Ian? Let me ask you that question. If you could do anything in the world, if money wasn't an issue, what would you do? Would you do the job you have now?
No, I'd be doing
would you be playing guitar, writing poetry, painting with watercolors, working out, gardening? What do you really want to do?
I think that's the thing. We're never allowed the chance to think about it. We're told what to do at school. We're told to go to university. We're told to go to college, or we're told to get a job, and then we're told to work by a boss, and then we're told to retire, and then you just die. We're not given a kind of a chance to find out who we are, what we truly want. How did you find out what you wanted? Was it just trial and error, or?
I decided to take a chance. I've always loved physical fitness. I think for me that physical fitness changed my life. Going from a bullied kid to being successful, the pivotal point for me was when I found my way into the weight room. So I always had a love for it. And I tried to do other stuff. I tried to be a teacher. I tried to be a cop. I tried to do the corporate thing. And it never fulfilled me like working out. And then one day I just said, fuck it. I'm going to take a chance and roll the dice, and I'm going to try to make a career in something I really love. And that's when my world opened up for me, because it's easy. Not easy. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it, but like, I love going to work. I love helping people become better. I love talking to you on this podcast. So the work itself, I am motivated all the time because I have a deep passion for what I do. And I would want you to explore, if you're listening to this, what do you really want to do? And fuck what other people say. Turn it into a career. Go after it.
Because you've had some amazing things in your life. You've competed at the top level. You've come back from like a life-threatening illness. You've you've had the kids, you've built your business, you've done, like, you've started your own podcast, you've written like amazing books. I mean, can you go into a little bit about the colitis? I mean, my brother-in-law has just come back from it. He had to get the bag put in, etc. At that point, how did you change then? How did it affect your approach to fitness? How did you change your diet? Because it's such a deep problem that kind of really messes with you internally. Can you go into a bit about how you got that mental strength to come back? How did you recover? Because you really go into certain recovery protocols that really work for you and make you able to do these amazing things. But could you discuss a bit about your recovery and what you've learned about recovery during this time?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to loving what you do. I love working out. I love being fit. I love my career. So first of all, I was extremely motivated to not let this thing hold me back. And then once I decided I was willing to do the work to overcome it, I knew I needed help. And so I really just sat down and said, how am I going to do this? How would I write a workout program for somebody who I didn't know anything about? How would I, if you came to me and said, you want to train a world-class, golfer, how, you write a program. Well, what do I do? I started researching. So I got on the internet and I Googled, cures for ulcerative colitis, cures for C. diff. Can it be cured? What diets have helped people? And I just read the shit out of everything I could read. And I came up with a couple of names. There was a company called Biome, who had this kind of technology made by a guy named Naveen. And there's a doctor named Helen Messier, who's one of the best gut doctors in the world. And I reached out to them. I'm like, I want to try your product. And I did. And it worked for me. And I asked if I could have an interview with their head doctor, and I got one. If I wouldn't have asked, I wouldn't have got one, but I asked, and they said yes. And if she would have said no, I would have went down the list and got somebody else. But I did the work. I did the research. I did everything I needed to do to get all the information that I needed. And then once I had that information, I put it into practice.
And that's something else.
You know what I mean? Like, and by the way, Ian, it's no different than this podcast. If you had never done a podcast before, what would you do? How would you start a podcast? Go on the internet and Google how to start a podcast and start looking up stuff and learning, and then call somebody up who has a podcast and ask for advice. Pretty simple.
No, it's amazing. People would rather have an excuse than actually go and do something. It's that moment of, it's easier to say something's holding you back than actually trying to find a way around it. It's easy to kind of justify it. Oh, I would do that, but I've got the kids. Oh, I would do that, but I work too much. Rather than, it's easier for us to tear somebody else's success down than say, well, they've probably worked harder for it. They've gone and done X, Y, Z, or good for them for being able to do it. We all, in this society, there's a lot of trolls. We're more negative about each other's successes because it's scary for us to see what somebody else's success than it is to think, oh, that could motivate me to go do something. We'd rather, be the crabs in the bucket and pull each other back in than letting somebody escape. How do you think social media and things like technology and these kind of apps and like Instagram and things like that have had an effect on your clients? Do you see them having a negative effect on people? Do you get people to take social media cleanses so they stay away from the comparison and the negative?
Listen, I'm going to get heated here. I hate that bullshit. You don't need a social media cleanse. The problem's not social media. The problem is you. It's another excuse. And if the problem isn't social media, it's your neighbors. It's the people you go to church with. It's your coworkers. It's people you saw on TV. The problem is 100% you. Instagram's just another vehicle for you to behave in a really shitty way.
Thank God you said that. The number of...
Like, how big's your town? Where do you live?
I'm in Glasgow at the moment, so there's a
Okay,
couple
so
of...
I actually have been to Glasgow. I have some good friends there. EDA gym. Um, do you know EDA?
I've not used it, but I've passed it a few times.
Yeah, and I think they're in Edinburgh too. But um, it's interesting. John Balbus is John Balbanesi is the guy. But here's the deal. Go 30 years ago in Glasgow and sit down in a little coffee shop, and what are you going to hear? Some old men sitting around at a table complaining about everybody else, making excuses, being negative. That's just Instagram. Because you have access to it on your phones. You can have access to it all the time. It's no different than television. No different than being at work. You have other people you work with, correct?
Yeah,
Is there gossip in the workplace?
all the time.
Is there jealousy?
Yep.
Is there negativity?
Oh, yeah.
When you get a promotion, is there a whole course of other people saying he was lucky?
Oh,
He
yes.
got it because the boss like there's all kinds of this bullshit everywhere. The problem again is not Instagram. The problem lays within your own soul. So stop blaming Instagram because you'll never get better if you keep blaming Instagram. That'll just be your excuse that keeps you from having to deal with your own shit.
Definitely. Because that's something... Whenever you see people wanting to get in shape, it's always, oh, I need to have a cleanse because I'm having too much sugar. Oh, it's not my diet's fault because I'm not eating vegan. Oh, it's because of this class that I'm not succeeding. It's never the amount of work you're putting in. It's the bullshit we associate around it. It's the noise that we attribute rather than the work we're putting in. That's why I loved your material so much, because you cut... It felt like you were speaking to me and cutting through all that BS that I had told myself about why I couldn't get in shape, why I couldn't be successful, why I couldn't do things. And as I got more and more into the fitness stuff, I then realized you had a lot of psychological upgrades as well. And it was like you were cutting through the noise that I was creating in my own mind. And then I realized why you were so effective as a coach, because you don't allow people to create the stories. You get them into what they want to do in life. You actually get them to achieve and find the goals they really want, and you give them the tools to then go and do it. And it's amazing the stuff that you do. So was that the inspiration behind the podcast, was to kind of go into things in a deeper level than you currently are able to do with individual clients? Or what drove you?
I mean, it's really just to reach a lot of people, because I can't reach a lot of people working with them one-on-one. I'd love to take the lessons I've learned and positively influence as many people on this planet as possible. And so the more ways I can do that, through social media and through the podcast, the more people that can get help. And listen, if one person gets in touch with me and says their life has changed for the better because of the podcast, I've done something good.
Yeah, because I mean, I've read some of your articles on men's health, and I tried was it the single movement fuck it program or something, I think you called it, and it just, I thought, no, that could never work. I think it was 10 sets of 10 squats I did, but everybody kind of goes into, oh, I'm doing this type of periodization, I'm doing this type of progression, and I think we've forgotten how to do the work, and that's what I like about your material, your podcast. You're very straightforward with what we do, but has a guest been on it that has changed something that you've held as a sort of deep-seated belief? Have you had somebody on that's kind of has helped you change the way you look at something?
Yes, but there's too many examples to give specifically. I learn from everybody I have been involved with. So there's people like Gunnar Peterson, people like Ben Bruno, people like Ashley Borden is incredible. And Tiffany Simmons, who's a lawyer, Sarah Azari. I mean, I've had a lot of really good guests on the podcast, with my partner in the podcast, Joe Sabula, another guy I learn from every day. And honestly, every single one of these people, they teach me something. And so to give you one example would diminish the others. But yeah, I mean, I am never too proud to learn from other people and learn from experts, because I think that even the person that you meet in line at the grocery store can probably teach you something that you can make your life better from. So I'm never too proud to learn, and I'm grateful for all the people I've got to talk to.
Because I've still got pages of questions, but we're into like, it depends. There's so many different rabbit holes to go down here that I would love to.
I'll tell you, this has been a fun experience for me. So we can just do a part 2 sometime or part 3. It's up to you.
Because I'd love it, because there's so many things I was thinking, I need to ask him about. And this is where I struggle with guests like you who have such a deep area, because there's so many things, but to keep it, like to avoid having to go just a wee bit into that, and then you've missed out this section, and you kind of bounce around at times, because I feel like I'm not doing you justice, because you're such an interesting person and there's so much to you.
I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, in the meantime, people can learn about me. They can go to @Bobby Maximus is my social for everything. You can go to bobbymaximus.com. You can check out the Maximus podcast. You can buy my book to start learning, and you can go over this podcast when you edit it and listen to it and make another list of questions, and we'll just do it again.
And something I did want to ask you was, how do you think becoming a father has changed you? How has your outlook on life changed becoming a father?
It's more perspective. I think you learn what's important and what's really not important. I think it helps you prioritize what's important in your life. I shouldn't say there's priorities that are priorities for everybody. It helps you prioritize what's in your life and put things in perspective.
Well, I know we've come to our time. I mean, I can't believe how quickly it's gone, but what would you want people listening to take from this? If you had to give them a kind of a go-home message, what would it be?
Keep it simple. It's not that hard. Just focus on being better than you were yesterday, and good things will happen. That, and do what you love. Quit your job. Get out of that bad relationship. Stop doing shit that you're miserable doing. Start doing stuff you love.
And for those listening again, if we wanted to work with you, how do we get in touch? How would we?
You can email me, Bobby, BOBBY, @BobbyMaximus.com, BOBBYMAXIMUS.com, or drop me a line on my social media, and I'll be in touch.
Well, I really have, I feel like we've only just started. There's so many things I want to talk about, and I feel like we've kind of bounced around. I haven't given it justice, so we definitely got to get you on again. It's been great fun. I really hope you've had even a quarter of the fun I've had. But is there anything that you would like to mention? Anything coming up that you would like to promote?
Nope, that is it. Just check out the podcast, check out my social. And that's it. I would love for you guys to follow me and start interacting with me. I love learning about people, and I'm really grateful that you gave me this platform to come on, and grateful that you valued me enough to spend some time with me.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.